everybody, Ketwolski here, checking in with another one of our hashtag Star Trek discussions videos. Today we're going to be doing a part 2 of our Borg theory episode. A lot of response on this video, and I continue to get a lot of response on this video, so I did want to go ahead and address some of the concepts and ideas that you, the fans, posted up inside the comments, and address some of the questions, comments, concerns that you also posted up towards the video itself. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into this. Okay, so our first comment today comes from Stephen Klein that says, a better theory to explain how the Federation in the future was not aware of the Borg and its technology when the Borg showed up on an episode of Enterprise. Riddle me this. Well, Stephen, I did cover this in my previous video where I talked about the theory of first contact and if it reset the timeline, but I'll go ahead and recap a little bit of that piece now for you. Essentially what it was is I kind of, and maybe this is a lot of inferring on my part, that the Federation had a catalog of a bunch of crazy Cybermen that attacked a scientific team, stole a ship, and then left, going towards the Delta Quadrant or whatever that was attacked and destroyed by the Enterprise crew. I don't think that, several hundred years later, that would have been really common knowledge. I don't think it was hidden away by Sector 31. I don't think it was removed from the records. I just think people genuinely didn't really know. It's possible that data later on went back through Federation archives after having encountered the Borg to try to see if they had ever counted them before, but it's also not necessarily possible that the same computer system that they had back in the NX-01 time frame is the same one that they have currently in the TNG series that they had at the time. So it's possible that the data actually just got lost. Next up, we have a comment from Kevin Cole who asks, call an audible, what does that mean? That's a football term that I use in my day-to-day speak. I thought that everybody knew what that term meant, but I apologize for using it, not explaining it. Essentially, it means that you had a plan, in this case, the context of the Borg attacking Earth, and when you call an audible, it's to sit there and say, okay, instead of using this particular plan, we're going to suddenly shift and use a completely different one. It's a football term that people set up for a play, they call an audible, and they immediately shift to a different one in order to, deal with a defensive team. Next up, we have a comment from Jason Quill. Quailantan? I don't know how to say your name, sorry. It says, in a conversation between Neelix and 7 of 9 and Voyager, saying the Borg didn't assimilate the Kazon as their technology was unremarkable and would have detracted from perfection. Well, I personally don't think that they didn't want to assimilate the Kazon because of their technology. I think they didn't want to assimilate them because of their weird barnacle hair that they had. Very bizarre. Very, very bizarre. Next up, we have a comment from OPS UK. It says, the real answer is pretty obvious. If the Borg sent an entire fleet, they would assimilate the Federation, and then the writers wouldn't have a show left. That's very true. In this case, it was a movie, but I get your point. As for an in-universe explanation, I guess I just always assumed the Federation was a fairly low priority to the Borg. They would use priority expansions to their main Delta Quadrant territory and assimilation of the most significant threats to them. The Feds were pretty far away from their main territory and unable to seriously threaten the Borg due to the limited speed of Federation ships. So not worth diverting a lot of resources to assimilate them. Yeah, I mean, that does make sense, and that is a fairly good theory that, they maybe just, looked at the assets that the Federation had, especially gearing up for the Dominion wartime period and stuff like that. Maybe they sat there and said, well, we actually only need one Borg cube. We don't need a whole fleet of Borg cubes. So just send one ship out there and it should be fine. Should be fine. Calculated risk. Next up, we have a comment from Olivia Moore. It says, the thing is the Borg doesn't develop their own technology. They pretty much can't. They progress technologically through assimilation, not through innovation, as they have no personality. That's what I understood from Voyager anyways. I could be wrong. No, Olivia, you're essentially correct. The Borg can grow as a species, if you want to call themselves a species. They grow as a species by assimilating the culture of other cultures and other aliens and other races into their own so that they can continue to grow internally. I don't think that there's any inventors down there that are making, the Borg version of the George Foreman grill. I don't think that's happening.
People ask me all the time, George, what do I do with my idea for a new product?
Next up, we have Jay Aldridge. It says, do you believe the Borg are the species that enhanced the space probe Voyager 6 in the Star Trek the motion picture movie? Yes, I do, and I know some people disagree with that, some people agree with that, but me personally, I agree with it. Next up, we have Micronoid? I don't know either. I think the reason why the Borg send only one cube is because one is generally enough with most species. I think this theory is reading a bit too much into it. In the book Watching the Clock, the sphere builder sent the Borg back in time. This was their first attempt to wipe out humanity before teaming up with the Xindi. So I think that the author was getting at it at a reason why the Borg don't go nuts this time around because of time traveling is because they don't actually have the ability to do that. This explanation is as good as any for fixing that plot hole. The Borg, I would say, potentially do have the technology to time travel. One theory that's out there right now is saying that there's only access to a specific time-altering transwarp conduit that's near Earth's atmosphere, and that's why the Borg had to, wait until they got inside the solar system of Earth and right above Earth before they were able to access it. So it is possible that they don't have the ability to maybe generate a time, a temporal wake or temporal whatever field themselves, but it is possible that they are aware of where certain temporal things are, like temporal fissures or temporal conduits or whatever it is, that they can then use in order to get back in time or even get around anywhere. So it's possible they haven't mastered the technology yet, but maybe they're aware of it. So that's a good, interesting theory. Next up, we have a comment from Paul Patton. This is an interesting and amusing theory about the Borg, but I couldn't help but wondering what would constitute truth conditions from a theory about a work of fiction when the theory encompasses motives and strategies that extend beyond those stated in said work of fiction, ? Well, Paul, that's basically this whole goddamn channel, so sorry. Next up, we have Monkey Shines Productions asking who would win in the fight, Borg versus Cybermen. I'm not a huge Doctor Who fan. I know, please don't crucify me, but I do think that the Borg would win, and maybe that's my Star Trek bias poking out. Next up, we have a comment from Nighthawk, who says, at 1240, the Borg were not OP, they were the perfect match for humans because the Borg want to assimilate. They want to improve and dominate, while the humans, being on the losing side, fight for survival. That's something the Borg will never understand because they've never been on the winning side all along. They never knew what it was like to have to enter a fight they may not win, regardless of the outcome, because there's no way out. That's how humans fight. That's very true, and I do think that essentially the human spirit, the human condition, is something that the Borg are looking to add to their distinctiveness from a biological standpoint. So that's an interesting concept that you're throwing out there. Next up, we have David Buckley. I think the Borg are humans from the future. Let's think about it. They have never said what race they first dominated. Why would it not be feasible that it was the humans of future? Well, this obviously goes against the theory that the Borg were the ones that modified the Voyager 6 probe, but it's also possible that humans from the future just maybe went a little too far with, android enhancements, and they accidentally made themselves into the Borg. It could be also a fun theory to sit there and say, well, as a way to help combat the Borg, human beings began to augment themselves with certain types of different artificial technologies and accoutrements, and then eventually led themselves into becoming the Borg, causing essentially a causality loop, where in order to defeat the Borg, they had to create themselves into the Borg, and it just kind of repeats itself over and over again. Be an interesting idea, I think. Next up, we have John Steiner. Just dumb. Oh, the Borg don't want to appear resource poor, and so kept pressure on the Federation with one cube. That's shockingly stupid and assigns a posturing move to the Borg that don't use or have any need for posturing. The simply and closer to Borg behavior is that the cube is just the protective shell of the sphere. By the way, watch the movie again and learn that the World War III casualties were far smaller than quote-unquote 6 billion. The overall amount of laziness in this analysis is stunning. Well, I did a lot of, research on this particular video, and a lot of my videos I do a lot of research on. I did make a mistake and say that the casualties listed out in World War III were 6 billion. You got me there. I definitely misquoted that, so I do apologize for that. But your theory about the Borg not needing the, the feeling of posturing or maybe threatening other races because they feel, essentially superior to everything else, that's a good point, and I think that also helps to kind of put a little pin into the balloon that is this particular theory, because the Borg have never operated like that. That would imply that they have a mode of thinking that are beyond what we've seen in the show. It is possible, in my opinion, that maybe the Queens as a whole may feel a need for posturing or other types of human-like behavior, but they haven't really explored that too much, so again, I'm not 100% on that. And the final comment we have today is from user Ziabetus, who says, "Dude literally repeats himself for 10 minutes straight. Dude literally repeats himself for 10 minutes straight. Dude literally repeats himself for 10 minutes straight." Anyways, guys and gals, that concludes today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please throw a like and a subscribe up on YouTube. And please follow me on Twitter at RealKetwolski. And follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/RealKetwolski. And tell me in the comments below what all of you think about these interesting theories that you, the fans, have posted up. I'm curious to hear what all of your thoughts are. And to continue this discussion about the Borg and really delving into their psyche and their MO and all that fun stuff in relations to the Star Trek universe. So, thanks for watching, and I will see all of you guys and gals next time. Live long and prosper, my Trekkies.